Hi, this is Oleg Pinos. We continue our video series on practical project evaluations using Geonomix. Today we'll explore one of the most exciting features of this technology, the real-time ability to see how variations in geological, engineering, and economic parameters drive the monetary value of a project. For decades, geoscientists, reservoir engineers, and economists each focused on their part of the project: the rock, the flow, the finances. But no one could easily see how a change in one area affected the outcome in another. Take geologists, for example. We do our job: mapping, interpreting, modeling, which eventually leads to estimating hydrocarbon volumes. But most of the time we don't really think about how the accuracy of things like porosity, thickness, or contact depth can impact a financial side of the project, like NPV. And to be fair, that used to be hard to see without the right tools. On the other side, the reservoir engineer works with models, whether it's well performance, field production rates, or pressure decline. And the same question arises: how do changes in these variables affect the final economic outcome? Economists face a similar challenge. When they run sensitivity analysis on financial parameters, shouldn't they also consider how geological and engineering factors influence the result? Each expert did their best, but there was no easy way to see the full picture. That meant more uncertainty, slower decisions, and sometimes costly mistakes. But now something fundamentally different is possible. Let's take a look.
I want to start with a quote from Nassim Taleb, an options trader and probably one of the most recognized experts on randomness and uncertainty. It doesn't matter how likely an event is. What matters is the magnitude of its consequences. That idea applies perfectly here. In project assessment, even a small variation in a single parameter or event can lead to significant changes in value. Take this, for example. A shift in the oil-water contact pushes the project into the subeconomic area. Situations like this aren't unusual, and the central question is: which parameters actually drive value? Which ones are the key contributors to the NPV? Well, if we stick with the traditional approach and build detailed 3D models like this, addressing the issue won't be easy. It's a time-consuming process that brings significant complexity. Nevertheless, the ability to quickly identify and rank the key parameters remains essential.
As we saw in the introduction, there is still room to improve current practices of project assessment. Ideally, everyone involved should understand how their individual contributions impact the overall economic performance of a project. So in the next section, we will introduce a new approach that gives geoscientists, engineers, and economists direct control and visibility. It enables them to test assumptions and instantly see the financial outcomes of their decisions. To see how this works, let's explore a real project. The following study is a technical audit of an oil field that our team completed recently.
Alright, let's kick off. Here is a mid-sized oil field with limited well control and high uncertainty. Let's see how we can understand its full potential. The field remained idle for an extended period, and recently the operator decided to move forward with development. Our task was assessing the economic viability of the project, and we faced the following situation. With the recent 3D seismic available, the structure looks pretty well defined, and that's a good news. But on the flip side, there are only 2 wells, and just one of them was tested. There is no production history to rely on either. With so much uncertainty, it's like trying to solve a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. We don't know exactly where the contact is, we are estimating the properties with limited data, we don't really know how the wells will perform, and of course, there are the usual economic uncertainties. Each of these unknowns brings risk that could potentially sink the project, and we've got to find out which risks actually matter.
Now we are jumping into the geological module of Geonomix, the engine behind the volume and risk calculation. Actually, its unique features made it possible to overcome the challenges I just outlined. The top surface was loaded and is shown here as a depth versus gross rock volume plot. It was set up as a probabilistic range. Reservoir and fluid properties are coming next. There are 3 optional models to define those: fixed or deterministic values, probabilistic models using any user-defined function, and symmetrical distribution with a plus-minus range. To set some of these parameters, we use the geostatistical libraries available in the program for various basins and regions. Once that's done, we get a probabilistic estimate of the in-place and recoverable oil volumes. Let's check it out in action.
Here is the program interface. First, we play with a deterministic case with fixed values for parameters like reservoir thickness, oil-water contact, net-to-gross ratio, porosity, and others. The top panels display the oil in place and recoverable volumes. Now let's experiment with oil-water contact here. Changing it meter by meter, we instantly see the response of the calculated volumes right up here. You can do the same with other properties using the scroll bars, for example, net-to-gross ratio, porosity, and so on. As we said earlier, all these parameters come with a lot of uncertainty. To capture that, let's switch to probabilistic mode. First, we set the possible variations for the oil-water contacts here. This range reflects our interpretation from the oil down to level in the well toward the spill point. For the other parameters, we compensated for data limitations using regional information from the geostatistical libraries of the program. Take porosity, for example. We go to the library catalog, pick the right property, apply it, and here we go. Once the volumes are calculated, we check the results. For recoverable oil, the range between P90 and P10 is roughly between 4.5 and 10.3 million. The tornado chart shows how much each parameter affects the recoverable volume, but the question is, do they affect the economic result the same way? We'll find out soon. Next up, we convert the volumes we've just calculated into production forecasts. In other words, we work out the field development. This is handled in the production module. As mentioned earlier, the challenges here are limited well data and no production history. To figure it out, we are using analog well data along with special tools built into Geonomix, probabilistic decline curve analysis, and type wells. First of all, we define the production performance for a type well. The key variables include the initial rate, decline rate, and plateau period. To build the analogy-based model, we load historical production from nearby fields with similar initial rates, well 1 and well 2. Then we match our well model to the analogs by tweaking key parameters. To reflect uncertainty, we will wrap it in a probability envelope. The resulting model captures the well's performance over its lifetime, annual production rate, and total output. Next, we scale up the type wells to the full field development level. We bring in recoverable volumes from the geological module and apply the defined well types. Then we calculate how many wells are needed to produce those volumes. With drilling rates and capacity constraints set, we model the field development using probabilistic methods. The result is a stochastic production forecast, thousands of scenarios capturing possible field development outcomes. These forecasts then feed into the economics. Now let's check out some features in the program, the match to analog wells. As we have no production history, we use well data from a similar field. Here we load the production data for two wells, 51 and 67. Then we match the well model to these analogs, the dots on the graph. We adjust the parameters here, so let's make plateau period as 1 and shift start rate to 30. Once we get a good match, we turn those parameters into variables using plus-minus% ranges. This way we apply a probability envelope to the well model. Next up, we move to the field model and run the full field calculation. The initial reserves, the type well, the drilling rate, calculate, and the final result is a set of production profiles, P90, P50, and P10. We push those to the economics.
The economic analysis starts with the income side. The initial input is the production forecast we've just calculated. Next, we set the oil price with symmetrical variations for the first 20 years. For sales, we allocate specific portions of oil and gas to export and domestic markets. The result is a probabilistic revenue calculation, which can be shown as P90, P50, and P10 graphs. Next up is the spending side, the expenditures. This includes CapEx, which covers the cost for appraisal and production wells, plus everything needed on the surface like field equipment, roads, pipelines, and so on. All operating costs, such as lift costs and others, are fully included as well. For tax calculations, a country-specific model is set up and applied using a dedicated module in the program. As you can see here, all variables except for taxes are defined as probabilistic ranges. Now let's finalize everything in the program. I won't go into detail about the features and workflows here. That's a topic for another video. Still, it's important to highlight that the tool is fully probabilistic and highly flexible. So as I mentioned, we've applied variations to parameters such as oil price, cost for production and appraisal wells, infrastructure costs, operating costs such as lift costs and all other spending. Over here, we can analyze the cash flow across probabilistic outcomes such as P90, P10 or P50. The project appears profitable and attractive for investment, as you can see on this diagram. We like to call it value thermometer. This estimated NPV range reflects the uncertainty in the initial field inputs we outlined earlier. And now, this is where things get really interesting as we move to the analytics section. Let's find out what's really driving the value. Is it porosity, oil-water contact, or maybe well performance? I open up the sensitivity module and add the variables to economics. This is oil price, well cost, infrastructure cost, production. Let's take well start rate, decline rate. We go to geology and take oil-water contact, net to gross ratio, porosity or saturation. And here we go. For the first time, we assess sensitivity across the entire project, from geology to production and economics. This tornado chart shows that the parameters we selected have highly variable influence on the final NPV. And here is what surprised me. The impact of well cost and facilities is minimal comparing to those from production or geology. Actually, the subsurface, which is far more uncertain, plays a higher role in shaping the project value. And this clearly shows us where the key efforts should be focused to reduce project risks, oil-water contact and well performance. Now is the time to highlight a standout feature, the ability to adjust parameters in real time and instantly visualize their economic impact. We'll start with the oil-water contact. Select it, and now watch what happens when I move this slider. Shifting it meter by meter, we can see the project value and the cash flow changing right here. Each step is about $9 million. Let's do the same for porosity. Changing it percent by percent results in even higher NPV shifts, about $60 million each time. This way we can assess any parameter we choose. Let's summarize what we figured out. The oil-water contact surface. We move it downward step by step. Each 1 meter shift costs about $9.1 million in NPV. Next, we adjust porosity stepwise from 0.21 to 0.18. With each move, the NPV changes by about 16 million. The start rate for production wells. For this parameter, a single decision like tweaking it by just 1 cubic meter per day shift the NPV by $15 million. Isn't that impressive? Well, this wasn't possible before, and now we can see the effects of our decisions in an instant.
So you've seen the new method in action, and your next question might be, how can we use it? What's the practical significance? Well, first of all, measuring economic sensitivities across the entire projects can clearly show where to focus next. For example, if the greatest economic influence is tied to uncertainty in the oil-water contact, then additional fluid sampling or measuring pressure gradients might be an appropriate next step. If structural factors have a major economic impact, we may plan new 3D seismic acquisitions, and so on. Most significantly, the project team can instantly simulate any scenarios, variations, or parameter changes, clearly revealing their potential impacts. This makes associated risks to be more visible and easier to understand. Furthermore, the cost of potentially inaccurate interpretations or conclusions can be directly assessed and quantified. We are no longer guessing, we are seeing, and that's a turning point. Throughout my career, I've never had this level of insight, and I'm happy to share it. Stay tuned.